Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Lead Service Line Replacement and Emerging Contaminants Funding. My name is Mara Cunningham. I'm a program manager here at the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation. I'm also joined by some colleagues from the New York State Department of Health.
Hi, my name is Dave Phillips. I'm the section chief of the design section in the Bureau of Water Supply Protection at DOH.
And I'm Daniel Steve Marshall, the section chief for the residential sanitation section, also in the Bureau of Water Supply Protection.
So while we're on this slide, I just wanted to point out something. So we're starting off clearly to begin. So we're covering the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or bill. Two of the funding pots, that law included three funding pots. One is a general supplemental, which is not covered here. Those projects had a solicitation which ended back in June. That particular pot will be included in the upcoming federal fiscal year DWSRF draft IUP, which is due to be released within the next couple of weeks. So today we're concentrating on the two pots which will not be included in the upcoming IUP. They'll be included in an amendment later. So we're talking about the lead service line pot and the emerging contaminants pot. And I want to again make very clear, the emerging contaminants funding we're talking about today is through the federal bill. It is not the New York State Emerging Contaminants WIA grants program.
All right, so our agenda today, we're going to give you a brief overview of EFC and DOH. We'll then provide some information about bill and then each of the programs. So we'll talk about available funding and eligible projects under each bucket. We'll then get into submission requirements, and we'll have time at the end of the presentation to answer some questions. If you do have questions throughout, please put them in the chat. We are going to monitor that. We'll try to get through as many as we can today, but anything that we're not able to get to, we will review and get back to you at a later date. Also, we do want to stress the listing and update deadline for these buckets. That is August 31st at 5 p.m. You can send your project listing and update forms to design@health.ny.gov. And for more information about the drinking water SRF, you can visit the link here, www.health.ny.gov. And these slides and a recording of this PowerPoint will be posted to EFC's website, so you will be able to retrieve this information. All right, so we'll get into an overview of our organizations. So for EFC, we are a public benefit corporation, and we provide low-cost capital and grants for water quality improvement projects. We also provide financial assistance for local wastewater and drinking water infrastructure through the Clean Water and Drinking Water State Revolving Funds. New York State is a national leader in annual water quality infrastructure investments, and since 1990, EFC has provided nearly $32 billion in clean water and over $8 billion in drinking water subsidized loans, grants, and loan refinancings to local governments.
So as far as New York State DOH, we are the DWSRF federal capitalization grant recipient. That's a capitalization grant that comes from EPA to DOH. We administer the DWSRF program. We co-administer with EFC. We at DOH handle the engineering side of things. So with that, we prepare the intended use plan each year. We handle the project listing forms and score the projects according to our public health priority scoring system. And we also handle the technical reviews and approvals of documents such as engineering reports and plans and specs. So a little bit about some of the things we've accomplished over the years. The DWSRF program began in 1996, so a little bit later than the Clean Water program. We've received over $1.4 billion from the federal CAP grants since then, and the state has put in approximately $270 million as part of the required state match. And as far as the funding we've provided, over $7.6 billion in total financings. That includes $396 million in grants to 306 disadvantaged communities through our hardship program. And we have provided assistance to 546 public water systems. So now we'll talk just a little bit about the bill itself, a little overview. All bill funding will flow through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. So all bill funding on the drinking water side. So this includes the lead service lines that we're talking about today and the EC money that we're talking about today. So because it's all SRF money, it's separate pots, it's additional money on top of the base SRF money. But because it's SRF, all bill funded projects must meet all DWSRF program requirements. This includes AIS, or American Iron and Steel, Davis-Bacon wage rates, and Build America, Buy America, otherwise known as BABA, which took effect in May of this year. And it's essentially enhanced American Iron and Steel, so it covers not only iron and steel, but also manufactured products and construction materials. So all bill funded projects must meet federal equivalency requirements. This essentially means some enhanced environmental reviews and federal cross-cutters that need to be met. Because the bill funds come directly from the CAP grant, they have to meet this requirement. Bill funding is targeted to small and disadvantaged communities. That comes from the federal government. And then because it's SRF money, all applicants need to be DWSRF eligible applicants, which essentially is community water systems, municipalities, and certain types of non-transient, non-community systems. Okay, so moving on to the lead service line funding, what's available? So this year, we're going to include in an amendment later, it'll be an amendment to the federal fiscal year 2023 IUP. We're including the federal 2022 lead service line cap grant of the amount you see there, over $115 million. So that's the amount that will be available in the upcoming federal fiscal year that begins on October 1st. This money is available only for projects that replace lead service lines or create lead service line inventories. One of the federal requirements is that we must give away 49% of this cap grant as additional subsidy, which when we say additional subsidy, we mean grant or principal forgiveness. And this has to go to state-defined disadvantaged communities. Okay, so under the lead service line program, we have two types of projects. The first is a replacement project. This is an actual construction project where you're actually going to replace the service lines. With these types of projects, you must replace the entire lead service line, both the public and the private portions. Galvanized lines are considered to be lead service lines if they are or ever were downstream of a lead service line. And replacement of lead goosenecks, pigtails, and connectors is eligible, even if those components are not connected to a lead service line for the purpose of this funding. So as far as the replacement projects, we want you to submit a replacement project only if you have a known number and a known location of lead service lines. So we understand if you're under construction, you may discover a few that you didn't know, so that's okay. You can include a buffer number of unknown lead service lines that are found during the work, but that I want to stress it should be a reasonable number, and you should provide some justification for how you determine that number. But I want to stress, if you're submitting a lead service line replacement project, you should only do that if you have a known number and known location of the services. If you don't know, then you can do an inventory, which we're going to talk about next. But also, all work submitted must be only for lead service line eligible work. Okay, so the second type of project is an inventory project. So this is a project that you would submit to identify the number and location of lead service line. So this would be a standalone project. This is one place in the SRF specifically where you can have a project that doesn't result in a constructed project. So you could submit an inventory, would be considered its own standalone project under the SRF. Once your inventory was completed, you can use that to submit a replacement project in a future year, because then you would know the number and location of your lead service line. So again, an inventory should be submitted if you have an unknown number and unknown location of lead service lines. Okay, so as far as submitting projects for the lead service line money, you can submit a replacement project, you can submit an inventory project, or you can submit one of each in any year. If you have a portion of your system where you have known numbers and locations, and a portion where you have unknown numbers and locations, you might want to submit one of each type of project. So you can submit a project to replace or to inventory your entire system or just part of the system. You don't have to do the entire system at once. You can do phases. You can submit projects each year. We want you to submit projects that are separate and distinct, that include only lead service line eligible work. So that means we want you to separate lead service line work from, for example, maybe water main replacement project, and submit just the lead service line work as a separate project for DWSRF listing purposes. It'll be assigned a distinct number. So you may have a project with water main work or other type of eligible work that's eligible under the regular SRF program. And they may even be the same contract, but we want you to separate that lead service line portion and money out of it and submit that as its own distinct project. Okay, so some more on submitting projects for the lead service line. Again, include only lead service line eligible work. And again, to stress, if you don't have known numbers and locations, don't submit a replacement project, don't guess, do an inventory, come back in a future year with that inventory to submit your replacement project. So we want you to submit the listing form and your engineering report to us at DOH at design@health.ny.gov by close of business on August 31st. And on our website, which is listed there, we have lots of information on the DWSRF in general, but specifically there's a guidance document there that has project submission and engineering report guidance specifically for the lead service line program. So I would highly recommend you go check that out. Okay, moving on to the EC funding. So again, this is Bill DWSRF EC funding. This is not New York State WIA EC funding. So for the upcoming federal fiscal year, which begins October 1st, we're going to be including the 2022 CAP grant for EC under the bill, which is just over $30 million. This this money is only for projects that address emerging contaminants in drinking water. And the federal requirement here is that 100% of this CAP grant must be given as additional subsidy. So we mean grants or principal forgiveness, where 25% of that has to go to state-defined disadvantaged communities or public water systems that are less than 25,000 in population. So as far as eligible projects, again, it must address emerging contaminants in drinking water. We're required by the federal government to have a focus on projects that address PFAS, but any project that addresses a contaminant on any of EPA's contaminant candidate list or CCLs are eligible. So those lists are easy to find online. So I want to stress here, we're not talking about MCL exceedances. It's any contaminant on one of those lists with a focus on PFAS. and projects should be submitted that include only EC related work. So again, don't include water main work or other types of infrastructure that's not directly related to addressing the emerging contaminants. We understand that there will often be a reasonable amount of related pertinent work. An example of this would be if you have a well site and you're proposing to add GAC treatment to the wells there, you may have to upsize a pump, or you may have to, increase the capacity of your HVA system or something along those lines, but that's related to the EC project. Don't come in and tell us that you need to replace the tank that's across town that's not related. Okay, so submission requirements. So again, for the bill lead service line and EC funding, the project listing forms are due by August 31st for inclusion on what will be an amendment to the federal fiscal year 2023 IUP. So the bottom line is, if you're interested in funding under these programs for the fiscal year that begins on October 1st, you need to submit your listing form by August 31st. So the listing form, again, is available at our website, which is listed there. Submit the forms to the design@health.ny.gov email address. And as I mentioned, we will be issuing supplement or amendment to the federal fiscal year 2023 IUP, which will come out likely very late in 2022 or early in 2023. Okay, so this slide just shows how to contact people at DOH. This map is in the IUP. It's also on our website, the address that we showed previously. So if you have general questions, you can submit them to the design email address. You can submit them to me personally. My email address is here. If you have questions on a specific project, the best way to get good information is to contact the area manager, depending what county you're in. So the western side covers our state health department, western and central regions. That's Monica King and Will Grady. And on the eastern side, it covers the capital area and the metro area, DOH regions. And the contacts there are Brock Rogers and Annie Balbian.
We've also provided the contact information for the CWSRF and DWSRF in general. So for CWSRF questions, you can contact me. My information, email, and phone number are there. And for DWSRF questions, you can contact Dave at design@health.ny.gov. And if you have specific questions, like Dave said, about EC and lead service lines, please indicate that in the subject line so they can be addressed. Okay, so we've had a few questions come into the chat that I'll read out loud. So first question is, for the lead service line replacement IUP, when will the public comment period commence and when will it end?
Okay, so as I mentioned, we will be issuing a supplement or an amendment to the federal fiscal year IUP. So the normal, so-called normal IUP that includes the base program and the other part of the bill, that final IUP will be issued on October 1st. So sometime after that, as I mentioned, we'll be issuing the amendment to that, which will include all the projects that submit for the lead service line money and the EC money, as well as it'll outline all the information and all the program requirements and things like that. So that amendment will be posted with, we'll have a public comment period associated with it. So, and that's expected to come out late 2022 or early 2023.
All right, and the next question that we have, it's a multi-part question. So the attendee said, we are putting together a meeting of a number of small water systems to discuss the need to implement the lead service line replacement inventory and the best approach. Our initial thought was that we might get a better pricing structure by combining systems and getting assistance from a single contractor on multiple systems. Hold on, I think I lost the question. Is there some way to get this funded? Does it have to be broken out into each system?
I think the best way to answer this question that's kind of complicated is you should probably contact us to discuss. Depending on how you submit a project, there is that disadvantaged community component of it. So if you submit one project for a number of systems, we may, look at it as one, large system in as far as determining whether it's disadvantaged community or not, versus if you submit a bunch of smaller projects for multiple systems, we would look at each individual system. So again, I would suggest contacting DOH to discuss that one.
Another question, this person's municipality is doing a lead inventory project as part of an ongoing meter upgrade project. So they are ahead of the game as far as submitting for replacement funding once inventory is complete. Would that be fair to say?
If you have an inventory that has produced information on the number and location of lead service lines, then I would say you're ahead of the game as far as submitting a replacement project. And again, you don't have to submit a replacement for your entire system. If you know where a few of them are, you can submit a project for those.
Is an engineering report required for a lead service line replacement inventory as well?
Yes, it's a lighter version of an engineering report. We're not expecting you to meet our typical engineering report requirements. So if you go to the DOH website that's listed here and go to the guidance document on how to submit projects for lead service line, that is addressed there and what we're looking for in an engineering report to be submitted for both a replacement project and an inventory project.
We have another question. A municipality has an inventory happening now, but this is from the inside of the resident's home. Do you have a suggestion on how to get an inventory of the service before the curb stop? Some of that can be under a street. What would you recommend?
Well, the best way to start would be looking at your own public records to see if you have any records that show what the service line material might be made of. Aside from that, you might need to do some, digging to know what those lines are made of. You can look at a number of factors, based on like the age of like the system, age of like the properties, age of like the homes in the area. There are a number of ways that you can just sort of try to come up with the best guess, not so much a guess, but best information for that. And if you don't know, you can always put that in as an unknown material as part of your as part of like the inventory.
The next question is, does your office conduct the inventories or must the village seek a private source?
We do not conduct the inventory, so you would be hiring a contractor to do that.
Or they could do it themselves. They don't need to get somebody else from the outside to do that, but it's not done by us. One of the other questions we've had that's popped up a couple of times has been about disadvantaged communities. Dave, I was wondering if you could sort of give an overview of what we look at when it comes to what makes up a disadvantaged community.
So right now we have a definition of disadvantaged communities, which looks at the MHI of a system, the poverty rate of a system, and the environmental justice standing of a system. That's in our current federal fiscal year 2022 IUP section 7, which is on our website. It's also in our hardship guidance document, which is on our website. When we submit or when we release the upcoming amendment to the IUP later this year or early next year, as I mentioned, we may have changes to that, which are specific to one or both of these programs. We don't know at this time, but all that will be spelled out in those amendments, but to give you a good idea of, what disadvantaged community means, and again, what the current definition is, you can go to our website and look at those documents.
Have another question. If a lead gooseneck is the only lead portion of the service line, would this be eligible for receiving funding for full replacement?
So I believe that with the lead, I don't know that the service line itself, if it's not lead, would be eligible, but the gooseneck would.
Well, I mean, if the only part of the service line that contains lead is either like the gooseneck, the pigtail, or the connector, that line as a whole, or that service line would be eligible to be part of the like the program. But we would only, I believe, only funded the lead part, because why would you take out, say if the rest of the line, it was copper, we wouldn't want you to take out the copper pipe just to put in new copper pipe if it's already there.
Another question, can an inventory begin before funding/financing is determined, assuming that the terms and conditions are met?
Yep, as long as you include all the terms and conditions, all the SRF requirements, that project can be funded.
On that, pardon me, on that note, I think we should all also be reminded that part of the lead and copper rule mandates that you have an inventory done by October 2024, which you are required to do whether or not you come into this program to get funding for it. So you need to do the inventory one way or the other. So you should start.
See, another question, what type of expenses are eligible to be funded for lead service line inventory projects?
I would say anything that's directly related to performing that inventory.
Yeah,
would be
you can
eligible.
do, admin costs. If you can do the work yourself, if you hire a consultant, those fees. If you hire an engineering firm, those fees. If you have to do, like some, construction, like to dig up some lines, those costs would be allowed. But basically, most of the things that you would think of that you would need to do to determine the service line material.
Is an RFQ required for engineering services related to the inventory if they will use these funds?
You're receiving a grant through these funds, then you need to meet the federal A&E architecture and engineering procurement requirements.
And does the law authorize using, hold on, let me skip one. If a galvanized service line follows a lead gooseneck, is the entire service line eligible for funding? I think we just answered that
Yes.
question. Let's see. We have a few more in our Q&A. A copy of the presentation and a recording will be made available. That's going to be on EFC's website shortly after this presentation is over. So we will have that available so that you can review this and download the slides as needed. When conducting a lead service line replacement, is there a minimum time expectation for how long water service should be discontinued for the customers or end user?
Not as a part of this program, but obviously you'd want to minimize the amount of time that anyone would be without water while work is done on their service line. You try and minimize that.
Another question related to timing for the amended IUP. Should a community expect to know its funding allotment and type after the public comment period closes for the amendment?
So, again, that amendment would come out late this year, early next year. Once that's finalized, we expect to move as quickly as possible to announce awards. So, we don't have a definite timeline, but I'm just going to say generally, probably in spring of 2023. So we have a question about, is this a reimbursement grant? So this money will function the way the DWSRF functions now. You submit a project, get it listed. Once your award is determined, you'll follow the normal process like you would for any SRF project to close on a short-term financing. Once that's closed, you submit disbursement requests for work that has already been performed to EFC, and then the money will be dispersed.
Does the municipality need to have an easement or access agreement to replace lead service line on private property?
Most likely, yes. What we've seen happen in our state-funded lead service line replacement program, which is not the same as this, it's this bill program, is that they do usually get like a temporary, easement to do work on private property. Like they sign some sort of, says that they get the property owner to, to sign something.
Is there a required municipality match?
So again, the funding is going to be very similar to the traditional DWSRF, where we don't have the exact details finalized for the lead service line and EC programs yet, but likely there, or we'll say there could be a grant component for a certain percentage or amount, and then the remainder would be funded through DWSRF financing. So it's not really a match, but there's a possibility or likelihood that there will be a loan portion.
Can you go to, there was a question about the purchasing of equipment that I don't know if it's in the result, but there's all in capital letters. There it is. Yeah, if you had to, there's a question that says, if you have to purchase a piece of equipment to conduct a survey, would that be covered? Example, a back truck. If there's any equipment that you would wish to purchase, you would want to put that into the engineering report that you submit along with the application, and provide a justification for that piece of equipment. Basically like the cost to rent it versus the cost, to purchase it, and what you would use that piece of equipment for. So it might be. Yes, right.
There's a question about if the utility proceeds with having a consultant for their inventory development in advance of receiving the award, would they be able to apply the award to those expenditures? So you can, but any contracts that are executed that you want to be funded with this money need to have meet the DWSRF requirements and have the EFC terms and conditions included in those contracts.
How long do you have to use grant funds for both the LSLR and EC funding?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so a good point here. This money is not necessarily going to be all grant, so as this question indicates, but I'm not aware of any deadline by which the money needs to be used. We are going to want to have projects close on their financing and get the work done in as timely manner as possible.
I think there was a question there if we had an example of an access document. I can't find it on my slide, but
Yes, let's see. Yes, do we have a model form for access agreements? If yes, is it part of the guidance or where can it be found?
we do not have a model agreement to allow access to private property. That's usually something that can be generated at the local level. It doesn't really have to be that complicated. It's something that you would do at like the local level.
All right, it looks like those are all of the questions that we have gotten. There are a few that we haven't answered, but we'll review the chat and the Q&A. And if there's anything that isn't answered in the presentation, we'll reach out to you individually. Again, these slides and a recording will be posted to EFC's website, so you can access them and review them. The deadline for submission for these funding buckets is August 31st at 5 p.m. Please mark that on your calendars and be sure to send in your listing forms by that deadline. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day.